All right, so I want to thank everyone for taking time to come hear our usual tech talks. Instead of having a typical tech person up here, you guys have a salesperson up here today, so this should be a little bit different than normal. I am the offer strategist and sales operations manager here at Skookum. Essentially, I'm responsible for assisting our sales team in making sure that the products we go to market with, as well as the message we go with and all of those things is buttoned up in the exact way we want to tell the story. Here today to talk about time because we're all in a role and a capacity in a business environment where we all plan. I think one thing that we all forget about is how important time actually is. So I want to go through time and look at a couple different technologies that help with time, but I want to accomplish a couple different goals today. I want to look at time through a new perspective, and I'm going to use this perspective to make a lot of other points throughout the course of the meeting or the talk, but I think it'll be important for talking about in the future. Feel free to phrase any of your questions referencing the perspective and stuff like that, because it's going to be a little unique. Now, this isn't a new perspective that I've come up with. This is something that's out there. It's just not out there in a very big way. There are organizations and stuff that are dedicated to it, and this is definitely something you can pick up books on and things like that. But I like the perspective itself, and we'll go into it here in a minute. But it's going to give us the opportunity to accomplish the other two goals I have up here, which is to examine some time management techniques you guys use today, and then some ways to get what I refer to as a higher ROT, much like an ROI is a return on an investment. This would be a return on time. So in order to force this new perspective, I want everyone to start thinking about time in the sense of money, okay? $86,400, and I'll show you guys where this comes from, but I want you guys to just think about it for a second. And imagine there's a bank account somewhere, and this bank account has your name on the account. And every midnight, there's a deposit of $86,400 into this account. And every second you don't spend $1, you lose $1, okay? Now, the thing about this account, though, is your balance from one day to the next never carries over. Whatever's in your account must be spent by 11/59/59 that day, or you lose it. Use it or lose it, real principle, right? So where 86,400 comes from, there's the math in case you want to see it, but essentially there's 86,400 seconds in every day. And this is a really granular way to start looking at what you are actually spending time on if you can time budget all the way down to the second. Now, I'm not suggesting anyone do that. That would be a labor-intensive task that would just drive most of you nuts before you ever saw any benefit out of it. But we oftentimes put things in buckets of an hour or 30 minutes and things like that. That's what we assume we can do things on a schedule for, when in all actuality, that might not necessarily be the best way to plan going forward. So I want to take a look at a couple different things, and here's why I like this perspective. It gives you an opportunity to budget time the same way you budget finances, right? Gives you an opportunity to take a better look at what you're actually spending your time or money on, how you spend that in the course of a day. And by learning all those things, you now know how to reinvest. So now you can take that $86,400 bank account and use that money in a more appropriate way to get a better ROT out of what you're currently doing. So I put a couple logos up here. You guys will recognize social media. There's a pretty funny question I've heard a lot, and I like to often answer it if I can, but what were we doing before Facebook, right? Like every single one of you is on Facebook or social media in some way just about every single day. And there was something we were doing before Facebook was in our lives, right? We were using this time for something else. And actually the national average is that 40 minutes a day, it's like 40.3, but I'll go with 40, is what you're actually using just on Facebook. I thought this was interesting. This is just desktop and smartphones, but this says that 50 of the, this is like a 3-hour allotment or whatever, but 50% of that time is essentially spent on average just on Facebook. And then there's the amount of time you're spending on Instagram, and the amount of time you're spending on Twitter, the amount of time you're spending on Snapchat. Like, what were we doing with our time before all of this was distracting us, right? Something somewhere had to be there. And so I like forcing you guys to sort of think about this in this regard, because you really are spending a ton of this. I mean, if you imagine 3 hours, $3,600 an hour is what's coming out of that bank account for tasks that you're spending. So if we're spending on average 3 hours just interacting with social property, you're spending about 1/8 of your daily budget just playing around on the internet right now with social media, right? Kind of different. Now, I thought it was interesting to go a little further down that rabbit hole, if you will. And this is the U.S. Department of Labor Bureau of Statistics, and they pull out census information and you name it to come across what they basically say people are spending their time on average. Now, this is a list off to the left. I don't know if you guys can read it as well as I would like for you to be able to, but we'll zoom in on it in a second. But it gives you a more granular daily dose than what you would normally see of like 60 minutes in a day, because this breaks things down in hundreds, right? So you can actually physically see up here at the top where it says sleeping, you really are spending a third of your time daily in bed, right? So it really is one of the more important activities you do for yourself, right? Buy a nicer pillow, I like that idea. But I wanted to do the math for you guys in a slightly different way, so I actually converted this all to seconds right here. So this way you can actually see what you're spending your time on. Again, so $33,000 just sleeping, but what I think is funny is you look at the working category and we're only spending 11,000 seconds there on a daily basis. So even though you spend 8 hours doing both activities, something somewhere is off if we're not actually spending time there. I think it's interesting at the very bottom it says other activities not elsewhere classified. And that's somehow supposed to be comforting that we're spending just a little bit of time there, but I have no idea what it means at all. I just thought it was a funny thing to point out. But I like this particular way of looking at things because it really does give you an opportunity to budget what you're spending your day on. So if you had access to this for yourself, you would know exactly where every single dollar, essentially, you're spending in time is going to, right? So it's a little different. I want to kind of pick on for a minute Alan Lakin. I don't know if anyone knows the name, but in the 80s and late 70s, he was one of the heavy topic leaders for time management. A lot of the things that are currently used today, a lot of the systems that are built out are built around what are called Lakin principles. And I put this one up here. This is the quote that he's famous for. If you've ever sat in a room and heard someone give a tech talk about time, they've said this. If you've ever picked up a motivational book or a to-do book or anything like that, this is always a pretty good first chapter statement right here. But if this is true, why is it that in a capacity where we all plan all the time, we still fail, right? If it's truly what we all interpret it to say, which is failing to plan is planning to fail, then why do we still plan adequately, take whole days and whatever just for planning, and we still end up having issues and failures, even though we plan, right? And I think what Alan meant to convey that no one really is interpreting it for anymore is that planning adequately helps you fail, or helps you not fail in that process of doing your projects or whatever it is, right? So it's interesting. So he attributes failures, if you will, to a couple different things, and I agree with them here, and so I wanted to pick on these things individually. Time estimates in general are stuff that you have to do, right? If you're going to give yourself a task, you have to have some idea of how much time that task is actually going to take you to complete. And very, very calculated. We do this in that hour-long, 30-minute, 15-minute block sort of schedule that all of our Google calendars or whatever happen to sync up for, right? So there's no opportunity to actually take it outside of these little tiny windows that we do things in. Ego estimates. And I don't know how many people in here are fans of Silicon Valley, the TV show on HBO, but there's a scene in that show that's actually a perfect example of these ego estimates. And there's two programmers who are going back and forth arguing about who can do a particular function faster, right? Well, I can do it in 2 hours. Yeah, well, you're a chump. Like, I can do it in an hour and a half. Well, I can do it in an hour. And we do this naturally just in our own heads. Like, you have to look at your own skill set and who you are and how well you accomplish tasks. And we end up putting these time constraints on ourselves where we feel like just to keep up with the rest of what we're going through, right? Performing on a high level at your job, making sure you're efficient, making sure you're doing what you need to do, we have to force ourselves into these time constraints that necessarily don't work. But these all come out of what Lakin describes as sort of ego. Buffer time, quality time, basically this is the time that we build into a plan for the time that the plan didn't go right, right? It's the, if we mess up, I don't want to be held accountable for that date or that time. So I'm going to give myself an extra day to get something done. I'm going to give myself an extra hour to get something done. I'm going to schedule time just to do things that came up over the course of what it is that I was supposed to be doing anyways. And then the biggest killer is not planning spontaneous tasks, right? How many people right now in here are involved in planning type activities with what you do for work? Do you do any actual planning? Do you plan to do things yourself? Is that a way that you keep yourself on task, to-do list and things like that, right? How often in the course of your to-do list and task list does something else come up and you drop everything you're doing and work on that task, right? So you have the foresight to go out of your way and plan adequately your entire to-do list, everything you need to do, but then when something comes up, you forget about the fact that you had a plan in place. You forget about going back to these initial steps and planning out again. You simply handle the spontaneous task as it comes up, right? Whereas if we could just stop for just a second and dial it back just a little bit, use those same practices that we've used before in order to make sure we're planning adequately, we're going to not have spontaneous tasks like this pull us out. And this particular failure barrier, if you will, spawned what's called the Lakin question, which is what's the best value of my time right now? Now, I don't know everybody in here and what your specific jobs are, so there's no way I'm going to stand up here and tell you what the best value of your time is right now. What I would like to get everyone to start thinking about is when momentum slows down, or when it doesn't seem like you're working on the right thing, just ask yourself this question. And what I think you'll find oftentimes is you're working on something or in a capacity that you're currently being blocked from being able to do. If that momentum has suddenly come to a screeching halt on your to-do list, it's probably because of something that you shouldn't be working on or can't be working on or just isn't exactly what you should be spending your time on at this exact moment, right? Now, he calls out one other thing in specifics that I picked on a minute ago, but in '79 we didn't have Facebook, so he just labeled them distractions, right? We're fairly distracted as a group, as a society, as a people. I mean, I've heard it over and over again. We live in an ADD society now, right? Everyone's got 5 screens in front of them all day long, and people are on their laptop and their cell phone while the TV's on in the background, right? Distractions sort of rule our life. So here's where we're going to get a little techie, and this is where you guys are probably going to enjoy this a little bit more than not. I want to give you guys some tools to help eliminate distractions. And these are return on time tools, right? So if you think about it, let's look at the perspective again, right? Every second is costing you $1 in this $86,400 bank account. So if you have to spend a second doing something, but there's technology out there that can get you a higher value out of that second you spent, that's the definition of return on time. Does that make sense? Cool. So these are a couple different tools that are out there that help increase your efficiency, increase your workflow, eliminate distractions, and I'll actually go through them all with you because I think they're pretty interesting. I've got 2 different logos up here. One is a Apple logo, the other one is a logo for PC. I wanted to make sure to give a little bit of a option for you guys to know what's actually important for you or not. But I'll go through these. So self-control is available on both app and PC. These are not cell phone apps. Okay, these are Apple's or Apple and PC apps, extensions to Chrome, things like that that you guys can basically download. The PC version of this app is called Freedom, so don't look for it on self-control. If you have a PC, you won't find it. But what's interesting about this, it actually allows you to block out distracting websites for a set amount of time. So you pick this ambiguous amount of time where you want to really just focus. Let's call it 2 hours. And you can set this to either shut down your entire access to the internet for 2 hours, or you can create yourself a blacklist of websites, right? So if I know personally, I'm going to call myself out here a little bit, Reddit is going to destroy some of my efficiency today, I can put an 8-hour block on it that I won't show up on my computer. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. You can't uninstall everything on your computer and reinstall it. You can't turn your computer off, turn it back on. It blocks it. You are blocked. So before you freak out about it, just play around with it in the blacklist mode a little bit, block yourself from a website or 2 before you completely shut everything off, because the last thing you want to do is accidentally kill your email for an entire workday. It's not a very fun experience. I've done that personally. Track time's interesting for the perspective that I gave because it gives you an opportunity to audit how you actually spend time on your computer. So it actually gives you a bank account view, if you will, of how much time you spend in Firefox, how much time you spend in your email client, how much time you spend on iTunes, and even what you listen to on iTunes, which is kind of interesting if you're a big music fan. But it also shows you how often you're shifting back and forth between apps or between windows, right? So If you're one of these people that's going from Firefox to your email to your calendar and then back to iTunes, and you're doing this every couple seconds, you can actually set an alarm on this particular tool that allows you to be gently reminded that you might be kind of floundering a little bit in where your attention is. So I think it's a pretty interesting one. Concentrate, this one's Apple only, but this one allows you an opportunity to set different work modes, and I really like this one for the job that I do. So this is cool. If you work in a multiple capacity job, like some of your job right now is do a little bit of writing, some of it's a little recruiting, some of it's a little prospecting and things like that, you can actually set up workflows through Concentrate. So you can say, I need to focus on writing. And when you click on your writing bubble, essentially will open and close programs, block them for a certain amount of times, just like self-control, give you an opportunity to set status alerts and things like that in there. But essentially I can click writing, and what will happen is my computer will turn off the internet for me. It'll turn on my Spotify. It'll automatically hit a certain playlist that I want it to hit. It'll shut down my email. It'll shut down my calendar, and it'll open a Word document for me just by clicking a button. Then if I want to go back to prospecting, I just hit my prospecting button. It reopens up all of those windows and pages and everything that I had before, so I can immediately get back into what I need to be focusing on. So instead of navigating through 55 screens or having 779 draft emails because you're a big window fan, this gives you an opportunity to focus in on what you need to focus in on, right? National Velocity, we use something here internally called Slack. It has a lot of the features that National Velocity has. This one gives you an opportunity to centralize and sync all of your scattered notes. And it's neat because it doesn't just work on things that you type. So if you're one of the people that still uses ink and pen, I don't know who does that except for me anymore, but if you're one of these people that writes things down, scribbles them on whiteboards, all that type of stuff, this gives you an opportunity to actually take all of those in any form that you have them in and load them into National Velocity. And you can either build a scrapbook of all of your notes, or you can even go in and have it all converted into digital files so that it's searchable in the whole 9 yards. It's a pretty interesting tool. With that being said, I was actually mentioning something to someone here a little bit ago. If you are still a person who uses paper and pen, there's actually a product out there called Echo, and I use it personally, and it's basically a digital pen that comes with a digital notepad. It's real paper, but it's got these very, very teeny tiny grid lines on it that are unique to each sheet. So everything you do while you're just writing and jotting and taking notes and in the field or whatever, you can then just go plug the pen directly back into your computer and it'll upload everything you wrote down. It's got some really neat features for recording what you were actually doing at the time. You can write and draw out your own menus and things like that directly with the pen and use it for software adjustments to what you're actually using the pen for and stuff like that. It's a really neat tool. They're kind of expensive, but I highly advise it if you're someone who still uses pen and paper. Focus booster is an interesting one. Pomodoro technique, I don't know if anyone knows what that is, but it's basically a philosophy that says you are most efficient when you work for 25 minutes and take a 5-minute break, okay? I can focus a little longer than 25 minutes, so there's other tools that do this that I'll go through as well, but essentially this gives you the opportunity to take your daily list of things you need to do, budget them out the same way you normally would. I need to do this, it's gonna take me an hour. I need to do this, it's gonna take me 30 minutes. And it actually will build it all into this for you. So it puts it in these 25-minute chunks of working for 25 minutes and then taking a 5-minute break. This particular tool has been noted for also expanding people's attention span because you wouldn't believe how fast 25 minutes really does roll by. So if you can start to feel that in sort of a different way, feel that 25 minutes happening to you over and over and over again all day, have a real good idea of what you're actually going to need to get a task done, right? If you think something's going to take you half an hour and you're on your third 25-minute block about it, maybe next time you don't schedule yourself only one block for that again, right? The neat thing is this one actually comes with a really cool to-do list set of features. So a little bit more than just writing it down or putting it in a calendar somewhere. And it comes with a free time management coach through the software it is. So it'll actually give you techniques for, hey, you said this would take you an hour. We actually found you spent an hour and 18 minutes on it. Here's some suggestions on what you can do to help that, right? Timeout. This one allows you to take regular breaks on a schedule that works for you. So like I said, I like to work in a slightly different capacity. I like to work for 90 minutes and give myself a 15-minute break. That works better for me than 25/5. So this gives me an opportunity to say, I want to actually work on that type of a schedule, right? I want to work on 15-minute breaks at these particular times a day. So it gives me an opportunity to sort of force myself to not just burn myself out. It's real neat. It also has the opportunity to actually give you these little tiny gentle reminders to just look away from your computer for 60 seconds at a time every 30 minutes or so you don't end up straining your eyes, so you're not staring at your computer like a zombie around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? Stay Focused is a Google Chrome extension, and it's interesting because it's sort of the opposite of self-control, the one that we looked at initially, that said you could shut down the entire internet for just this amount of time. This one works on the principle of, and some of you probably had this when you were kids, you can only watch TV for 2 hours a day, or you can only use the phone for 30 minutes, right? That's exactly what this particular tool is for. So if you really want to curb how much time you spend on Facebook or Twitter or any of these types of websites, you can go in and give yourself daily allowances of budget of time towards using those things. So if I really need to curb my Reddit time down to 30 minutes a day, I can go in and set it that anytime I access that site, it's basically going to put a little countdown timer at the top of the screen, and it counts backwards for me and lets me know exactly when I'm going to run out of time to use that site before it blocks it completely for me for the day, right? So that one's kind of an interesting one I like a lot. Antisocial blocks all social websites, hands down. Facebook, Twitter, Flickr, Dig, Reddit, YouTube, Hulu, Vimeo, even the social comments you see at the bottom of a lot of RSS feeds and articles and things like that, that all goes away as well. This gives you an opportunity to stop interacting with social if it's one of those things that really distracts you, and allows you to get back into doing whatever those tasks were that social was currently killing your focus on. Focuswriter is a software that allows you to convert pretty much anywhere where you can type on the internet into a word processing application. So instead of the normal, I'm going to switch over to Word or anything like that, you can actually use this. And what this will do is, let's say you're writing an email. This will actually block out all of your menus. It'll block out the time on the clock. It'll block out everything except for the actual text box, and blows that text box up so that you're only focusing on what you're actually writing. You're not focusing on alerts at the bottom of your computer and how much time am I spending doing this particular task, which is really helpful if you're one of those people that gets pretty distracted by, well, I want to go through and I want to make sure this looks pretty before I send it out. So I'm going to build out this sentence, and then I'm going to edit, and I need to be bold, and I need this to look like that. This allows you to just get the writing done, and then you can go back and worry about all that other stuff later. So it has all the normal spell check, word count, all of those normal features. But something else that it has that I think is pretty interesting, if you're in a writing role or something like that where you need to produce content on a certain level, you can actually set goals for yourself through this program. Goals through, here's the amount of time I'm going to spend writing, or here's the number of words I need to write today in order to accomplish my goal, which is a pretty neat tool for multiple purposes, as you can probably imagine, but I like it particularly if you have a report or something like that that's due by a certain time. It works pretty well. And then Think is a visualization tool. It allows you to limit your attention to just one application at a time. So if you have Firefox open or Chrome or whatever it is that you're working off of, whatever it is that your window is actually looking at is the only thing that shows up. Everything else fades into a sort of opaque background and just sort of falls off your screen. This way you don't have to worry about being distracted again by all that other stuff that's not the exact current task that you need to do. These are the ways that I currently block out distractions. Not all of them, because a lot of these sort of step on their own toes, but the ones that I use, I really like Think, I really like Focuswriter, and I really like Antisocial. These three are on here like this for a reason. This keeps me focused. Without these three tools, I absolutely would be one of those guys that's spending that 40 minutes a day on Facebook just because I can, right? So that's really it. I didn't want to take a whole bunch of time. This isn't a lecture, it's a tech talk, right? So I want to give you guys back a little bit of your afternoon. But I want to just sort of look at what we talked about a little bit today, right? Because if you guys can use this bank analogy, this 86,400 seconds, these $3,600 hours, if you will, as an opportunity to break down on a more granular scale what you're actually spending your time on, how you spend that time, and how you're investing these bank account dollars. And you can explore some of the technology we talked about to help eliminate some of the planning failures and just distractions you currently have. That's how you get a higher ROT with anything that you're currently investing your time in. So that's it. That's all. I'll stop talking, but I absolutely want to open it up for questions. If anyone has anything at all they want to ask, feel free.
worked with a lot of inside sales groups, a couple different companies. Can you talk about, I guess, the cultural shift that's required to move from like a frenetic, I guess, unfocused time management approach to the world to, all right, now adopting what you're talking about? I mean, is this you just got to hammer it until the light bulb goes off, or what's been the process as you've kind of introduced people to a more efficient way of seeing their day?
Right, so what's the shift or the sort of process that needs to happen in order for someone to go where they're at today from a time management perspective to using these types of things, these techniques, in order to get where they need to be in the future, right? Okay, so I want to make sure I understood the question.
I went all over the place.
And I want to make sure everyone could hear it too. So, so for me, it's interesting because I actually, I prefer to force this perspective on people, specifically whenever they've never really gone through time management stuff before, right? If you have no idea where to even begin as far as time management goes, as far as I'm concerned, get real granular with it first, and then you can start to really be much better about bucketing things into where you know they're going to fit. Now, unfortunately, time management is just one of those things that you're either going to focus on it and attempt to get good at it, or you're not. And I found that people that focus on getting good at it and they don't get good at it, they have a tendency to just stop because of the frustration of watching themselves fail over and over again according to the plan they put out for themselves. So you've got to sort of curb some of that, right? You've got to stop yourself from having those emotional ties to the fact that you're not completing tasks in a certain way, or that you're not doing it in a budget that you allowed for yourself. And as long as you can get over that, then you can usually get over that hump of adopting things in a more natural way and not fighting tooth and nail the entire process, if that makes sense. Anybody else? All right, well, again, I'm Kalani Thomas. Feel free to stop and ask me. I'll be hanging out here. Hopefully there's some pizza left for the next couple minutes. I'm happy to take any questions, but other than that, I thank you all for your time.